Welcome to People Love Process. This will be the first of hopefully many creative courses on People Love Process, and in this course we'll completely ink out our vector artwork, we'll then colorize it, and then we'll do some detailing using vector brush capabilities in Adobe Fresco on the iPad Pro. Once we have all that finalized in Adobe Fresco, we'll then push it to Adobe Illustrator on the desktop and clean up the artwork, and you'll see what I mean by that later in an upcoming movie. And we'll also do some additional creative exploration and button up the final artwork as well. So with that said, this is the first of multiple movies for this course. And in this movie, I'm going to focus on doing the line work drawing to establish our creative foundation. So let's get started. Now, as you can see, we're in Adobe Fresco, the Adobe Fresco app that is, on an iPad Pro. So even though I'm going to be doing 98% of this illustration digitally, meaning through an app and on and doing additional creative work once I push it to Illustrator on the desktop, I still gain from using analog skills. Now, I learned traditionally when I went to art school. The internet wasn't around. The Apple Lisa was where the computer on the Mac side, I'm a Mac user, was at the time. And we used that the very last quarter of art school to design some on-screen graphics, but nothing like what you get today. So I learned stat cameras and mechanicals. And, when I illustrated, if I was doing comps for advertising class, I used colored markers. And if it was illustration class, I was usually painting in gouache. That was my favorite kind of media back then. Also, colored pencils was fun as well. So this started in drawing. So if I go ahead and turn on this layer, this was a thumbnail sketch I did. Now, what you see on screen is a whole lot larger than what it actually was. This was pretty small on a notepad I keep on my desk. And I usually doodle when I'm on meetings or if I'm on a Zoom call, especially if it's just me and somebody else, I don't really do it. But if it's a meeting where it has, 4 or 5 people, I'll kind of doodle because that's how I pay attention. And I wasn't really thinking. I just started drawing a fish and started putting all this additional stuff on it, and I kind of liked it. And so I decided I want to progress this forward and do a complete illustration on it. So I go from this point, and then the next stage of drawing, I wanted to kind of tighten it up, because what I like to do when I do this style is have contour continuation. So let's go ahead and go to this layer, and I'll show you that. And this just shows the refined sketching that I do. Now, when I do a refined sketch, I use vellum, and it's kind of this color. It's translucent. So I set it over a printout of the previous doodle that I showed you, and I blow it up when I do that. And so this is about 100%, 8.5 by 11 sheet of vellum. It's not really vellum. It's a Nina paper translucent stock that I've used for, almost 20 years now. It's really great. It goes back to an old job I had as a designer at a small design firm in Salem, Oregon, and they used the same exact paper to do their inking on. So I still use it. It's great. You can erase on it. Doesn't mar the surface. And I do all my refined drawing on it. So here you can see it's the exact same concept, but kind of what I pay attention to is and I'm just going to go ahead and draw on this layer just to explain it, is I pay attention to areas like this, where this line goes into this line like that. Those are the contour continuation. Or if you go down here to the bottom of his lip, how these both go right into the fin. This one goes right into the fin like that. I like that. I like kind of doing that type of thing in this style. And I have that in other places as well, where the line here goes right through the next one. This line goes right through this kind of scale into the back of the tail, so on and so forth. At the top here, you can see this little element here kind of swings up and goes right into the fin. So I'm paying attention to that type of thing when I'm drawing these out. Now, once I get this is where I'm going to now continue to draw, or I'm going to use this as a guide for my digital drawing. So I'm not really guessing, not that I won't make improvements as I go along. I will, as you'll see, but I don't have anything pre-baked here. So this is going to be actually, you get to experiencing me creating a complete illustration in Fresco. I've never done that, and there's some reasons why I haven't done that, and we'll cover that in the upcoming movie. But you get to see the whole process. I might speed up some of it because this isn't going to go very fast. And let's keep kind of marching forward. So I'm going to turn on this layer here, and this is the refined sketch that I want to go ahead and use to guide my digital drawing efforts. So all I have to do with this layer selected, go here and adjust the opacity. So we're going to knock this down to about 20, something like that. That looks good. We can close that. And then on a layer above it, this is where we're going to do our inking. But first, let's talk about vector brushes. You have pixel brushes up here. You have wet media type brushes. Think a watercolor brush. Those are cool. So if you have this app, explore those, because you can, if you have Photoshop brushes, bring them into Fresco and use them. So it's a hybrid app. It has both vector and raster-based brushes, which is kind of cool. And I think at some point, at least if Adobe was smart, they would turn Illustrator into a hybrid app, because Affinity Designer is that way. You can use raster-based brushes in it, and if they brought that to Illustrator, it'd make doing certain styles way easier. Are they? I don't know, but it would make sense if they did. So let's talk vector brushes in Fresco. The only one I'm going to use is going to be a round brush. And I'm only sticking with that because I can control it through my settings. So with that brush selected, I can go down here to the settings, and you can see I have pressure dynamics I can set up. And if I click into that, you can adjust the pressure. If you put it at 100, it'll max out. If you press down with your Apple Pencil, in this case, on the screen, it'll get really large, and then if you touch it faintly, it'll get small. I usually set it a little lower than 100%, like that. Sometimes I go 100, depending on the style. I'll go back. We'll go to velocity. I don't really depend on this. Some people will draw at a certain pace or do it fast to get a certain look, and so you could set this, and that's how it will behave when you go at a certain velocity. But I don't really use it, but I still keep it turned on. Shape and outline, I usually put right around 80% for the jitter. Now, you could put this all the way down. Like if you go up here, this is the test area. So if I hold it down, you can see what it kind of looks like. I can go thick and thin like that, and that's 80%. If I bring this all the way down to 0, and I go back here, you know, you can get the same thing, but it's more smooth. It like smooths it out. And I don't want that. I kind of want that organic nature. So I'm going to keep it right around 80%. And the jitter distance is just how far in between one aspect to the next. So I kind of want that look and feel, because that's how I'm going to be handling the line work, is very organic. And I never use tilt and rotation. You might like that. You can adjust the pressure on the stylus, in this case, the Apple Pencil I'm using. I don't really mess with this either. I just kind of go with what the default is. So that's the only brush we're going to be using. And all I'll do at this point is just make sure I'm on the right layer, because we're going to focus all of our line work drawing on this layer here. So if you go into layer controls, you can name it. So I like naming my layers, even though you don't see it in the display. it's still a good habit to get into. And that's going to come into a huge aspect as we move forward with coloring and detailing, because we're going to need those layers to be organized in order to clean it up. And once again, that's going to make sense when we do it. So let's start inking. I always pick an area I like, so I'll pinch zoom in like this. You can control the nib size. In this case, it's 21. So if I go ahead and draw it, you can see about how big it is. That's fine, I think. Undo that. And we're just going to go ahead and start drawing based off of what we drew initially in analog, kind of like that. And keep in mind, every time I touch, so that'll be one shape in Illustrator. It doesn't fuse shapes together in Fresco. I really wish it does. I really wish it did, that is. Much like the blob brush and using a Wacom on the desktop in Illustrator, it'll fuse all those shapes together based off of your preference setting. They don't give you that option in Fresco. Ironically, they give you that option in Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, and you might be wondering, why aren't you doing it in there? Because their blob brush technology is really, really bad. I mean, it is horrible. And so I've kind of pointed that out to them, and who knows if they'll fix it. That's why I don't use it. I just prefer using Fresco. So we'll go ahead and draw that part. This will be kind of a reflective highlight down here, like that. And then we can go to the bucket tool and just fill in the rest of it. So that makes it go a little faster. So you can see I'm not going for perfection here. I want this to be very kind of organic. So let's go back to the brush, and I think I'm going to do his body. So that's the nice thing on this. You can rotate the canvas like that and go up a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and just do this outline that makes up the body, kind of like that. Now the variation on the line weight is me just kind of going light, pushing down, getting bigger, and I'm just kind of controlling that myself. Okay, I don't like that. I don't like how it blobbed out there at the end. Now on this area like this is where I'll go in and I'll just kind of improve that. So all of those times I tap the screen there, those are all separate shapes, as you're going to see eventually when we open up pretty much the final work that we're doing in Fresco in Illustrator. Like that. Now, if I was doing this in a traditional sense in analog, for lack of a better terms, I would use a Japanese brush pen that I usually buy from, I think the place is called Jet Pens. They're out of Japan. They're awesome pens. My daughter introduced them to me years ago, and I like doing this style in analog, inking it, and then just image tracing it. So once again, whatever you prefer. If you don't have an iPad, that's one way you could pull off this style. You could just do this kind of organic line work with a brush pen manually on paper and scan it in. You'll want to have a nice scanner. This is where I'll go into areas like this. Just clean those up so they transition nicely. That. So like instead of leaving it like that, I'll go into here. Now I should point out this is probably a little too big at this size, so I go down a bit, maybe 14. And then that'd be easier to create those areas like that. It'd be kind of cool, like if this is me kind of fantasizing, creatively speaking, if I don't know, you wore something on your head and it could read your thoughts, and you just go 14 point. It just automatically changes it that fast. Like that. So that's kind of how I handle that detailing. Now, if I was doing a traditional video, like I do one-off type of movie, I might show you this much and then I'll jump to the final art, but I'm not doing it here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep inking. And if I think there's something I need to explain, the video will slow down and I'll explain it, and then it'll speed back up. I'm not sure if I'm going to need to explain anything, but this process I'm going to do on everything else. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and you can just sit back and watch it. Okay, so I almost have this line work done. I just have to work out the tail. As I've been doing this, I've been thinking of something else I want to do to kind of button this up. So once I get the tail done, I'll do that. But I should have been paying attention to the time, because I'd reference, how long this has taken so far. But if you actually look up here in the corner, you'll see the time there. So if you go back in the video, you can probably deduce how long that took. What I'll do in the next movie, when we go over the coloring, I'll check that out myself, and then I can clarify that as well. Because that's what I usually have questions about when I see somebody's work and they're doing something. I like to know, well, how long did that take you to do that, A lot of people think things go a lot faster. And even though I wrote a book that's been published in 7 languages now, and a lot of different colleges and design programs use it, I don't consider myself a fast vector builder, let alone this vector drawing. I just kind of go at my own pace. So don't feel like you're slow, because I think I'm kind of slow. Actually, I know I'm slow because my daughter, who's obviously, I made her read my book. So when she gives me a file, at times, like if she has to build out a logo design she created for a client of ours, I'll look at the files she gives me, and I just look at her and I go, "Did you even read my book?" And just to annoy her. It's kind of funny, but Savannah will like crank something out and she goes, okay, I want you to look at it. And, you know, we use Dropbox, so she shares a link with me, or I access the file and open it up on my end. And I'm like, there's no way you're done. It's like, I just can't believe how, you know, she's pretty quick, but she is precise. So a lot faster than I am. Let's just put it that way. Should probably be using a smaller nib here. I don't like that, so I'm going to go back and redo that. We're going to go a little smaller. That'll probably work better. This is where digital is definitively different than analog. If I was inking this with a brush pen, I can't zoom in. It's like, so it's at a fixed size, but my face is usually like 3 or 4 inches away from the paper. And I have a specific set of glasses. I wear glasses just for drawing, just for doing this type of stuff. Because for me, it actually goes a little faster to ink this in analog than it does on digital, because digital is like a glove box. Think of those uranium rods that are handled by people putting their hands through a wall and gloves and handling them. That's kind of what drawing digitally feels like to me at times. Is it's a little detached, because like right now I'm zoomed in to this part of this tail, so I can't just look with my eyes to the right and see the full drawing just to gauge if I'm matching something else that I'm trying to match. Whereas if you're drawing in analog, I do that all the time. I'm kind of looking at other things, even though I'm focused on one certain area. And to do that digitally, you have to zoom in. So that feels a little detached to me. I know you can obviously get used to it. Let's go back up in size. My daughter, she loves drawing on her iPad. Now, she doesn't use Fresco. She uses Clip Studio Pro. So it's a raster-based program, but man, it's doesn't look like any kind of app you'll find for the iPad. She uses an iPad Pro and a pencil. It looks just like their desktop version, ironically. But you can't argue with the results. My daughter does some pretty cool artwork on it. I consider Savannah a superior, like, just raw drawer than me. She's a lot better, in my opinion. And because she just nonstop, like she just nonstop is creating all the time, always showing me stuff and blowing me away. It's kind of fun. Now, when it comes to using typography and developing logos, that's probably her Achilles heel. She can do it with my art direction and guidance, but when it comes to, like, especially character-based illustration, you know, she loves doing that. And so whenever we have those type of projects, I'm usually letting her develop the character, because she has such a sixth sense about it that it always comes out nice. And then, of course, I play art director and creative director, and she might just do the native drawing, and then I'll take it from there and I'll flesh out the final art in vector form. So it's kind of, in that respects, our workflow on those type of projects are distinctly kind of a tag team effort, where it's a good part her and a good part me. combine together to pull off the final art. So I'm going to do this last one here, and then we'll reassess our line work. So let's take a look at that. So I think we have pretty much our whole line work done. Now, the next thing I want to do, and I don't want to risk doing it on this layer, I think the outermost edge of the fish and the bubbles, I want it to be a bit beefier. And actually, as I'm looking at this, I think areas on the interior lines need to beef up, like this area. And probably here on the eye. See, these are things that I was zoomed in when I did it, and I can't compare those with other interior lines until I zoom out. So, oops, that doesn't look good. I don't like that either. Just think just a little beefier on this is going to look better. Yeah, that looks better. So these are the types of things I'll go in, I'll just finesse it. Now, my refined sketch that I'm drawing on top of didn't have any of this defined. It just had the overall general shape. And so this is me just making an aesthetic choice to, I'm not sure about that one. No, I think that looks good. I just think I need to carry it through. So I'm trying to find any obvious areas I think are too thin, because it's going to be a lot easier to do it in Fresco than trying to do it after the fact. Once we move it to Illustrator, I think these need to be beefed up as well. And we'll do this edge here. Maybe this one. I'm just looking at it and trying to figure out if there's other areas I need to do. I think maybe this one. Oh, these are a little thin. I like these a little thicker. I think that looks better. Now these need to be a little thicker. Okay. I feel better about that now. So let's create a new layer above this. And I'm going to stick with the same brush I'm using. All I'm going to do is I want to make the outer edge of this artwork kind of fatter, kind of beefier outline. And because I'm not sure, I'm doing it on another layer so it doesn't embed with the other artwork. And I think that does look good. It makes the inner ones kind of contrast well, the inner line weight, that is. All these will be shapes eventually, but right now they're reading as lines. Like that. I think that looks good. So if you compare the top fin, or tail that is, with the bottom part of the tail, you can see the difference. And if I go ahead and toggle off that layer before, after, I think it looks good with the thickness. So I'm going to go ahead and do it around everything. So I work, or I record these in a booth, a recording booth in my studio. And oh my gosh, it's hot today for whatever reason. It's the winter time, but man, it's actually, I just had perspiration fall off my forehead onto my iPad, on the surface of my iPad. So thankfully, we're almost done here, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Gets really bad if I'm recording something in the summertime because this does not have air conditioning. Yeah, that looks way better with a thicker outline around it. Now, when it gets to the teeth, I kind of like having that gap there. So let's see if I can retain that, but still make it thick. So this lip has to be a certain thickness, like that. But I think I'm going to cheat and kind of do it on the inside. Ah, that looks bad. On the inside here. That way I can leave that gap between the lip and the tooth. I don't want them fusing together is kind of what I meant here. Ah, that's not what I wanted. Wow, I really don't like that. So let's get rid of that. Ah! Sometimes Apple Pencil does that. It like dribbles instead of lays down a straight line. There we go. That looks better. Yeah, I like leaving that gap in there. Oh, have to do these areas. Want the continuity to carry through. Yeah, that actually looks better even in these spots with the thicker line. Okay. You know, the courses I developed for LinkedIn Learning, I've been doing since 2012. And I love doing them. They're very extensive courses. Like each one has maybe 30 movies covering all different areas and facets on the topic, whether it's brand identity, whether it's my newest course coming out is on vector brushes. And by the time I get this published, I think it'll be out. But I'm going to make a micro course based off of creating your own vector brushes for people of process as well. I'm going to try to do that for every course I do. That way, those who don't have access to LinkedIn Learning can still get some of the same information. I just obviously don't want to create 2 full-blown courses. It's just way too much work. So let's go ahead and finish the outline on the bottom fins here. That looks good. Do it on the outside of this one. And once I do the brush micro course on my People Of channel, it's also going to come with a pretty cool vector brush set that you can just start using immediately. But the nice thing about it is I'm going to show you how to create really cool vector brushes, whether it's a scatter brush, an art brush. We'll even, the odd man out with vector brushes is the pattern brush. It's cool, but it's not the same type of brush that you would use as the art brush. It's just for different types of things. It's more graphically centric for usage. Okay, I think that looks really, really good. Now, the only thing I'm going to do at this point is I'll have to fuse this layer here. So if we actually, let's just take a look with the thick outline, without. It's not bad. It's just way better with this to contrast with that the inner thickness. And I think that looks good, but we'd want to combine the two. So in Fresco, to do that, you just click on here and you go merge down at the bottom. And now it's part of that layer, and that's what we want. So as you could see, I did speed up some of the drawing because the methodology and aesthetic I'm after applies to all the line work. And in total, I spent maybe around 45, 50 minutes to ink everything out. So not too long. Just take your time. Go at your speed. There's no reason to go fast if you don't need to. In the next movie, we're going to figure out the color palette. And I'm going to establish our flat base colors that are going to be composed with the line work we created in this movie. Now, there is no way to share a Fresco source file from my iPad with you, but the raw artwork we created in this movie has been saved out as a native AI file you can open up in Adobe Illustrator on the desktop, and that will be included in the exercise files for this course. If you have any questions about what I documented in this movie, please leave a comment or ask a question below, and I'd be happy to answer it. Just make sure you reference what movie your question is applied to, and then that way I know how to respond to it. So with that said, let's move on to the next stage of the creative process for this project.